We're going on an Atlantic Coast road trip along US 17. Come on, let's go. Alright everyone, today I'm going to be doing US Highway 17. US 17 runs along the Atlantic Coast from roughly Jacksonville, Florida, all the way up to Norfolk, Virginia, where it then heads inland towards Winchester, Virginia, and Fredericksburg. We're going to be talking about the entire highway as it goes through some pretty popular coastal cities like Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, and Savannah. So let's get started with this coastal highway. But first, you're watching TheDerpHog, where I make highways content on all sorts of different topics. If you've been enjoying it, be sure to hit that like button. And if you've been really enjoying it, be sure to smash that subscribe button so you're notified on all future videos. And if you really want to help out the channel, become a member today where you get custom cool emojis, early access to future videos, along with one free extra request per month. And if you don't want to become a member, you can always just pay $3 for a intersection request in future videos. Those highways will be listed down in the description below, and I'll make sure to shout you out when that video releases. So let's get on with the highway. As you can see here, this is the map of US 17 running from US 41 in Punta Gorda all the way up to Winchester, Virginia at a junction with US 11, 522, and US 50. And the blue parts here is the part of the route that I've been on. So with that, we're going to be talking about northbound US 17. So we begin here in Punta Gorda, Florida, where we have it at the junction of US 41. We have a US 17 North shield and a 2 Interstate 75 shield. And once we go into US 17 itself, we have our first mileage sign with Winter Haven on the bottom line at 85 miles away, which I think is a good choice. Shortly up the road, we're now meeting Interstate 75, which gets signed north for Tampa and south for Naples. I'd rather see Miami there instead of Naples because Miami is a big place in Florida and it's very famous. And once we leave Interstate 75, we still get Winter Haven on the bottom line at 82 miles away. But now Acadia and Bartow are thrown into the mix. Here in Acadia, we're meeting one of the Florida state highways here. We're now signed north for Zolfo Springs. I've never even heard of that place. Whatever happened to Winter Haven? But our next mileage sign still in Arcadia, we get Zolfo Springs from the top line at 20 miles away. And Orlando on the bottom line at 112. Wow, that's pretty awesome, Florida. We're now passing through Bowling Green, Florida. The only other Bowling Green I knew of is Bowling Green, Kentucky. Here I mean US Highway 98 in Bartow, and US 98 and US 17 have a small concurrency. In fact, here's where US 98 splits off from US 17 to head west towards Lake Wales, Lakeland, and Lake Tampa. Oops, I mean Tampa. Sorry, it's just I see a lot of lakes there. And we're still probably signed north for Orlando. Yep, we are signed north for Orlando on our next mileage sign. Here in the Winter Haven area, I mean Florida Highway 540, and it's signed east for Legoland, and this junction here was requested by Ryan Golden because they use it to get to their relative's house and to take it west over towards Tampa. So thank you for requesting this junction. And shortly up the road, now meeting with US 92, where US 17 and US 92 have a long concurrency with each other. Now we're meeting US Highway 27, and in a couple weeks, I'm actually going to be doing a video on US 27 to celebrate Florida State University. Go Noles! Now we're meeting Florida Highway 17. What? That's pretty strange, because here in North Carolina, we don't have any state highways that are numbered after interstates or US highways, with the exception of 540 and 885 and 140. But other than that, yeah, no. So this is pretty strange. Now on our next mileage sign, we get Orlando on the bottom line at 44 miles away. Now we're meeting US Highway 192. Now we're splitting off from US 192 and then you're going to be joining with US 441. Here we're meeting the Florida Turnpike, and we're also going to be meeting Florida Highway 528 here in the Orlando area. Now we're meeting Interstate 4, which just gets no control cities. And now we're splitting off from US 441 to head towards downtown Orlando. Here in downtown Orlando-ish area, we're meeting Interstate 4 once again, and this time it has West 404 Tampa and East 404 we don't know. Now we're passing through Sanford, Florida, which is pretty strange. So does Florida like copying other states or something? And we also get to see a cool view of train tracks as we head through Sanford, Florida. And just north of the Orlando area, we're now signed north for DeLand, and that's where US 17 and 92 splits off. In fact, here in DeLand, we're now splitting off from US 92 to head east towards Daytona Beach. And let's see what we're signed north for on US 92. We're now signed for DeLawn Springs. I've never heard of that place. But our next mileage time, we get DeLawn Springs at 4 miles away and Jacksonville at 108. Wow. Here we're meeting Florida Highway 100. In our next mileage time, we get Jacksonville at 59 miles away. On our next mileage time, it's a palindrome one, and we still have Jacksonville on the bottom line at 52 miles away. Here in the Jacksonville area, we're meeting Interstate 295, which gets north for Savannah and south for Daytona Beach. And shortly later up the road, we're now merging into Interstate 10, where Interstate 10 and US 17 have a concurrency as we head towards downtown Jacksonville, which you can see in the distance here. And at the eastern national terminus of Interstate 10, we're going to be joining with Interstate 95 to head north towards Savannah and downtown Jacksonville. We're splitting off from Interstate 95 as we just get Union Street to US 17. And we also get the Jacksonville branch of Florida State and the place where the Jacksonville Jaguars play. So we don't know what our next control city is. Also for US 23, we get an exit for 3/8 of a mile. Pretty strange. Here we're meeting US Highway 1, and this is certainly not the last time we'll meet it. And now we're meeting Interstate 295 on the north side of the city. And a little bit up north from Jacksonville, we get our next mileage time, and we get Brunswick, Georgia on the bottom line at 57 miles away. Now we're meeting Interstate 95 for the last time in Florida, but not certainly for the last time ever. And now we're crossing over the St. Mary's River into Georgia. And on the other side of the bridge, we get the Georgia Welcome sign. At our first major junction in Georgia, we are now signed north for Woodbine. I've never heard of Woodbine, Georgia. But they make up for it and give us this awesome mileage time with Savannah on the bottom line 107 miles away. Pretty awesome. Now we're meeting US Highway 82, and US 82 and US 17 are going to have a concurrency with each other as we head towards Interstate 95. Here I'm meeting Interstate 95 in the Brunswick area, and it's signed south for Jacksonville, and north probably is still signed for Savannah. Also, this is the national eastern terminus of US 82. Still in the Brunswick area, we're meeting US Highway 341, and this is its southern terminus. Personally, if it ends at US 17, why can't it be a child of US 17 instead of a US 41 child? And now we're meeting US Highway 25 and Georgia 25, and they're signed for Jessup, while we're signed north for St. Simons. Okay. Here we're meeting the FJ Torres Causeway, which this intersection was requested by Speedboy 14, because he takes this causeway over to St. Simon Island, where he goes on vacation sometimes. So thank you for this request. Our next mileage time, we get Savannah on the bottom line at 67 miles away. So at least Savannah's still mentioned. Here we're meeting US Highway 84, and US 84 and US 17 have a concurrency here. And now we're meeting Georgia Highway 204, which takes you into downtown Savannah, and also over to Interstate 95. And further up the road, we're now meeting Interstate 516, where we're going to be joining with 516 East to head towards Interstate 16. And now we're meeting Interstate 16, and we're going to be joining with Interstate 16 to head towards Savannah. It's funny how Interstate 16 and US 17 are concurrent with each other. Here's where US 17 splits off from Interstate 16 at its national eastern terminus, and we're assigned north for Hutchinson Island. Here's a cool view of downtown Savannah as we're leaving Georgia and entering into South Carolina. And here is the South Carolina state line sign. And further up the road, we get the proper Welcome to South Carolina sign. In our first junction here in South Carolina, we get 17 north for Hardeeville at 9 miles away. Here in the Hardeeville area, meaning Interstate 95, which is signed north for Florence and south for Jacksonville. And after meeting Interstate 95, we're assigned north for Estill. What? I've never even heard of Estill, South Carolina. And I've looked it up, and apparently it's on US 321, which we haven't even met yet. So why are they signing a place on another highway that we haven't met yet? This should be Ridgeland, so sign Ridgeland instead of Estill, South Carolina. Oh my goodness. Here is meeting US 321, and it's heading north towards Estill, while we're heading north towards Ridgeland. On the outskirts of Hardeeville, we're meeting with US 278, and US 278 and US 17 have a concurrency. And I also recommend checking out a great series made by R. Nathan, who did a video on US 278. Here in the Ridgeland area, we're meeting with Interstate 95, and 95 and 17 are having a short concurrency here. Here are splitting off from Interstate 95, and we're signed north for Beaufort and Charleston. And our next mileage time, we get Beaufort on the top line at 24 miles away and Charleston at 63. Now we're meeting US Highway 21, and we get US 21 control cities now, which is pretty weird. Specifically that we're not at the US 21 junction yet. In fact, here is the US 21 junction, and we're going to be concurrent with US 21 South to form a wrong way concurrency for a short time. But once we pass that junction, we get back our correct control cities for Beaufort and Charleston. Here's where US 21 is splitting off from US 17 to head south towards Beaufort, and we're still signed north for Charleston. I skipped up to head to the Charleston area. We're meeting Interstate 526, which takes you over to North Charleston, and we're still signed north for Charleston. Here on US 17, where US 17 is going to be splitting off from Interstate 26 in 3/4 of a mile, while Interstate 26 is signed for North Charleston and Columbia. And now we're splitting off from Interstate 26, and if you want to check out my Interstate 26 video, it's right up here, as we're signed north for Mount Pleasant and Georgetown, which I think are good choices because we're still pretty far away from Myrtle Beach at this point, and I'm pretty sure there are faster ways to get to Myrtle Beach from here than just by taking US 17. Here's a cool view of downtown Charleston. And now we're meeting South Carolina Highway 703, which gets towards Sullivan's Island, and we're still signed north for Georgetown in the Isle of Palms. Here I'm meeting Interstate 526 on the north side of Charleston proper, which is signed for North Charleston and Savannah. And our next mileage time, we just get another one-liner, and we get Georgetown at 56 miles away. Here in the Georgetown area, I'm meeting with US Highway 701. And I skipped all the way up to head to the Myrtle Beach area, and we're going to be taking US 17 business here because that goes into Myrtle Beach itself. Here in the Myrtle Beach-ish area, we're meeting the beginning of US 501, and US 501 here was requested by Aaron the Xerox, so thank you for that intersection. Also, I was going to just show US 501 anyways, because US 501 is a major route here in North Carolina. And you know what US 501 is? It's the, hey, I know this highway. US 501 is 355 miles long. It stays roughly within the Carolinas and Virginia area like most of US 1 children. It travels from Myrtle Beach all the way up to Buena Vista at a junction with US 60, and it is one of 6 children routes of US Highway 1. It also forms a 106-mile concurrency in the state of North Carolina, also known as the 15501 concurrency. Some other major intersections along this highway include US 17, US 60, US 70, US 74, US 301, US 421, which I made a video on myself, Interstates 40, 85, 95, and Interstate 74. Plus, I'll be making a more in-depth video on US 501 coming up in the fall as it travels by Duke University. That's a little bit about US 501, so let's get back to US 17. Now we're being at 14th Avenue North, and if you take 14th Avenue down to the beach and walk onto the pier, you'll be treated by this awesome restaurant here, the 14th Pier Restaurant, which I enjoyed when I was down there in Myrtle Beach. Their grilled chicken sandwich was amazing. Now we're being 16th Avenue North, which was the road that we took to get to our resort, and which was situated on the beach. And a little bit up the road, we're now being 21st Avenue, and I've actually been to this Fuddruckers here. And as you can see, there's a mini golf place that I've also been to, which is further up the road here. And here's a better view of that mini golf place. I recommend checking it out if you ever go to Myrtle Beach. And now we're being 48th Avenue North, and this was the road that me and my family took to get into Myrtle Beach. And then further up the road, we're now reuniting with proper US 17, and we're going to be signed north for Wilmington, I hope. Yep, we get Wilmington on the bottom line at 62 miles away. Now we're being South Carolina 22, which is a major bypass route here in the Myrtle Beach area. And then shortly up the road, we're now entering into the state of North Carolina. Uh-oh, are we gonna have bad control cities? Nope, on our first mileage time, North Carolina, we have Wilmington on the bottom line at 50 miles away. Yay! Aw man, here's where NC Dot is showing its true colors. We're now signed for Bolivia at 24 miles away. What happened to Wilmington? They're being North Carolina 87, and it takes you down to the coast, while 17 is continuing north towards Wilmington. Now we're being Interstate 140, and it's signed east for Topsail Island, Jacksonville, and New Bern, and we're still signed north for Wilmington and Leland. Here I'm being US Highway 74 and US 76 in the Leland area, and we're still signed northeast for Wilmington, while 74 and 76 are signed west for Lumberton. Here's where US 74 and US 421 splits off from us, and US 421 South and US 76 East we're still signed for Wilmington and Carolina Beach. Here's where US 421 splits off from us as it's heading south towards Carolina Beach, and we're now signed north for downtown Wilmington. Here we're with US Highway 117 and signed north for UNC Wilmington and south for Carolina Beach, and we're signed northeast for Wrightsville Beach. And look at that US 17 shield, it's so huge. Here's where US 76 is splitting off from us to join with US 74. And here in the northern part of Wilmington, we're meeting Interstate 140 once again, / North Carolina 140. And it's signed west for Myrtle Beach, Benson, and Raleigh. Yay! But boo to Benson! While we're signed north for Topsail Island, Jacksonville, and New Bern. Here I'm in North Carolina Highway 210, and North Carolina 210 actually has a weird booking route. It makes kind of a huge C as it starts all the way up in Smithfield, and it ends all the way down in the southeastern part of the state. And here's where North Carolina 210 splits off from US 17, as US 17 is still heading north towards Jacksonville and New Bern. Now we're meeting North Carolina Highway 50 in one of these small towns. And our next mileage time, we get New Bern on the bottom line at 57 miles away. And now we're meeting the eastern terminus of North Carolina 210, and US 17 is still heading north towards New Bern. Here in the Jacksonville area, we're meeting with North Carolina Highway 24, and we're going to have a short concurrency with it as we head toward Camp Lejeune, Morehead City, and New Bern. Here's where North Carolina 24 is splitting off from us, as we're assigned north for New Bern. And here in the northern parts of Jacksonville, North Carolina, we're assigned north for New Bern. Here I'm meaning North Carolina 58 and North Carolina 58 and US 17 have a concurrency here. And here's where North Carolina 58 splits off from us as it heads towards Pollocksville and Trenton. Okay. Here in the New Bern area, we're going to be with US Highway 70, and we're going to be current with US 70 East as we head towards Morehead City. And here's where US 70 is splitting off from us, as we're now assigned north for New Bern and Washington, North Carolina, while 70 East is heading towards Morehead City. And also, this is going to be part of future Interstate 42. Here's where North Carolina 55 splits off from us, as it's assigned east for Bayboro, and we're assigned north for Washington, North Carolina. Here in the Washington area, we're meeting with US 264, and signed for Washington and Greenville. Let's see what we're signed for at US 264. Oh, we're now signed for north for Williamston, which I think is a good choice, because that's where I meet US 64 and US 13. And our next mileage time we get Windsor on the bottom line at 33 miles away. What? Oh man, North Carolina's being inconsistent again. Why? Here I mean US Highway 64 and it's signed east for Plymouth and west for Williamston and Tarboro. And here I mean US Highway 13 and US 64 is splitting off from us as it's heading east towards Plymouth and Manteo. And this here is part of future Interstate 87 now. Here's where US 13 is splitting off from us as it heads toward Ahoskie and Windsor. And we're probably signed north for Elizabeth City and Norfolk. At random junctions, we're now signed north for Edenton. What? But our next mileage time, we get Elizabeth City on the bottom line, 39 miles away. So, come on, NC Dot, why are you being inconsistent with US 17 here? This is making me angry. And here's where US 17 splits off into a bypass route and a regular route, and we're going to be following US 17 north into Elizabeth City. Here in the Elizabeth City area, I mean US Highway 158, which we're going to be doing a reboot next week on this highway. And here's where US 158 splits off from US 17 to head west towards all western North Carolina. And now we get a future Interstate 87 corridor shield here on US 17. In our next mileage time, we get Portsmouth on the top line at 27 miles away and Hampton at 56. Now we're entering the state of Virginia. And our first junction here in Virginia is Interstate 464 and Virginia 168. And we're going to be joining with 464 for a very short time to head towards Interstate 64. In fact, here we're joining with Interstate 64 to head north towards Suffolk and Richmond. And here's where US 17 splits off from Interstate 64 to head north towards Portsmouth. Here I'm in US Highway 460 and US 13. Here I'm in Interstate 264 and we get no control cities for either route. Now we're in US Highway 58 here in the Norfolk area. And I've got a question. What is up with this weird looking font for these street signs here? It just creeps me out. Now we're meeting Interstate 664, which is signed south for Chesapeake. And we get no control city for northbound 664. Now we're meeting US Highway 258, and 258 and 17 have a concurrency here. And our next mileage time, we get Fredericksburg on the bottom line at 130 miles away. That's pretty awesome here. Here we're meeting US Highway 60, and it's signed for downtown Newport News. And we're signed north for Hampton and Williamsburg. Here we're splitting off from US Highway 258 as it's signed north for Hampton and Norfolk, and we're signed north for Williamsburg. Now we're meeting Interstate 64, which is signed east for Hampton and Norfolk. And let's see what we're signed for on Interstate 64. Oh man, we're signed for the Kentucky treatment here in the Northern Tidewater area. Also, this picture was taken by Jay the Great Gaming, so thank you for the picture. On our next mileage time, we still get Fredericksburg on the bottom line at 92 miles away. Carrying Virginia Highway 33, which is actually a continuation of US 33. And now we're meeting US Highway 360 and US 17 and 360 have a concurrency here. And are you kidding me? We get Tappahannock with a straight up arrow, Reedville, which is on 360, and Fredericksburg, which is on US 17. If we're already in Tappahannock, we do not need an up arrow for it. Why don't you put a third city for either US 17 or 360? No need for that up arrow, Virginia. Here's where US 360 splits off from US 17 to head towards Warsaw, and we're signed north for Fredericksburg. On our way to Fredericksburg, we'll meet US Highway 301. Here we are entering into Spotsylvania County. Yay! And shortly after, we now have our next mileage time. We get Winchester now because we're close to Fredericksburg. Here in the Fredericksburg area, I mean US Highway 1. And this picture is actually brand new because when I lived up there, this is what it looked like. We had a Famous Dave's, which I've only been to once because shortly after I moved up there, it closed down, sadly. And we also have the Cookout over here and a Wawa, which I've actually been to. A little bit up the road, we're now going to be joining with Interstate 95, and this is our first meeting with Interstate 95 since actually in Hardyville, South Carolina, which is pretty crazy if you ask me. Here I'm meeting Virginia Highway 3, and it's signed east for Fredericksburg and west for Culpeper. Here's where US 17 is splitting off from Interstate 95 to head north toward Warrenton and Falmouth. And this here is pretty weird. We have a fly-on ramp to its intersection, which is literally right here. As you can see here, look, it's literally a fly-on ramp to this street here, which we intersect right here. So why in the world did Virginia build this flyover ramp? It just seems useless. Our next mileage time, we get Winchester still on the bottom line at 77 miles away. I am not going to try to pronounce that county name. Here in the county that must not be named, we'll meet with US 15 and US 29 to head north to who knows where. Now we're splitting off from US 15 and US 29 as they head towards Leesburg and Washington, D.C. And we're signed north for Winchester and Warrenton. Here in meeting Interstate 66, and we're going to be concurrent with Interstate 66 for a short time. Here's where Interstate 66 splits off from us, as we're now signed for Delaplane and Paris. Oh my goodness. I've never heard of Delaplane or Paris, Virginia. And I looked it up, and guess what they are? An unincorporated community. So what happened to Winchester? They're just trying to keep you on Interstate 66 to take you to Interstate 81. But no, sign something for US 17, not unincorporated communities, Virginia. I'm gonna have to bring out the sign again. Ugh. But our next mileage time, we get Winchester on the bottom line at 27 miles away. Where was it when we split off from Interstate 66? Now we're meeting US Highway 50 and US 50 and US 17 are going to be current with as we head towards Winchester. Here we're meeting with US Highway 340 in this middle of nowhere junction. And now we're meeting with US Highway 522 and US 522 and US 17 and US 50 all have a currency here. And let's see what we're signed for as we head further up the road. And now we're meeting Interstate 81, which is signed south for Roanoke, and we just get the Kentucky treatment for Jubal Early Drive, which kind of makes sense because we're about to enter into downtown Winchester. Now we're all three meeting with US Highway 11, and US 11 and 17 and 522 and US 50 all have a concurrency here. And here's where US 50 splits off from US 11 and 522. and we get an end US 17 North Shield. So with that, we're going to be ending US 17 and moving on to all the places I'll go. So these are all the places I'd visit if I ever was on US 17 northbound. First, I'd like to visit downtown Punta Gorda, and I'd love to visit Bowling Green, Florida, just to say that I've been to a Bowling Green. And then I visit Orlando itself, and not because of Disney. I've never really been interested in amusement parks. And I'd love to visit Jacksonville, Florida, and St. Simons Island in Georgia, along with Savannah, Georgia, and Hilton Head Island, and then Charleston. I'd love to revisit Myrtle Beach and not get COVID again. And then I'd love to revisit Wilmington and its beaches. I'd also like to visit New Bern because that's where the birthplace of Pepsi is. And I'd like to visit Washington, North Carolina just to see how it is. And I'd love to visit the Tidewater area. And then I would love to revisit Fredericksburg, and then finally I'd like to visit Winchester. So that ends US Highway 17. Thank y'all so much for watching this video on US Highway 17. I hope you guys learned some more interesting stuff about the highway and how it's pretty inconsistent in the state of North Carolina. So with that, these are my next few highways. Like I said earlier, I'm going to be rebooting US 158. And then after that, I'm going to be doing US 17 southbound. And then I'm going to be taking a short break, and then once I return from it, I'm going to be doing the M50 motorway in Ireland, because Florida State is going to be playing Georgia Tech there in Dublin. And then after that, I'm going to be doing US Highway 27 northbound for Florida State. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all next week.